minus 15 seconds. Brace for shot. 3, 2, 1, shoot.
History has long shown the necessity for preparation against attack regardless of its source. Well-built ships with well-trained crews remain the key to survival.
Going out to sea to have 10,000 pounds of explosive blow up beside your ship is an everyday occurrence.
And we had to be just ready for anything.
The experience of just going through the shock, again, is something that you'll always remember, and you pass it on.
In 2001 comes a new Aegis destroyer, the DDG-81. Recently, it has been challenged by its greatest test in its early life, ship shock trials. During World War II, ships under enemy attack often lost power and weapon systems due to a near-miss explosion. Some were knocked completely out of commission without one direct hit. Newly designed and modified Navy ships and their mission-critical components are subjected to a thorough and demanding series of tests that determine whether or not they can withstand combat at sea. The Flight 2A Aegis destroyer USS Winston S. Churchill is no exception. In order to further strengthen the design of the Flight 2A Aegis destroyer, USS Winston S. Churchill endured 3 intense underwater detonations off the coast of Florida in May and June of 2001. The intention of a ship shock trial is to simulate a near-miss military strike upon a naval ship. The Navy implemented the ship shock trial program to continually advance and shock-harden ship structure and system designs. A ship is subjected to a powerful underwater explosion in a controlled environment. By detonating a 10,000-pound charge at a specific distance from the ship, engineers can not only validate shock-hardening standards from past experiences, but also determine where improvements are needed. Ships' force is also tested by the combat-like situations requiring them to fight through the shock and respond to any situation or crisis. The ship's initial stage of development, the fabrication of the hull, began at Bath Iron Works in Bath, Maine. This is also where the ship was officially christened in April 1999.
We did about a year's plus worth of maintenance in a 4-week period. All kinds of quarterly, semi-annual, annual checks just to establish what the engineering baseline is for this particular ship, so that after the shock, particularly after the third one, we can go in and see how it's differed any from where we were before they started setting off the charges next to us.
Experiencing this testing for the first time were the officers and crew of USS Winston Churchill, who give us some of their insight on these events. For example, a comment on the high-voltage power supply shock mounting.
It's one of the results of the testing on the John Paul Jones was that those particular components needed to be shock mounted. I think the big thing they're going to prove with this shock trials is the commercial off-the-shelf technology. John Paul Jones was outfitted with mil-spec equipment, consoles, combat system. Here, the Aegis weapon system, the ATWIX, Advanced Tomahawk weapon system, gun weapon system, the VLS, all has some sort of COTS or commercial off-the-shelf technology embedded into it. Even our damage control and engineering systems use these systems also. This will be the test to see whether it can withstand damage control in a war environment.
Finally, on March 10, 2001, the USS Winston S. Churchill was turned over to the United States Navy at the commissioning ceremony held in Norfolk, Virginia.
Commander Franklin, you have an outstanding ship named for an outstanding man. We all owe Winston S. Churchill a debt for his leadership, for his advocacy of a strong transatlantic alliance in defense of freedom. We have all inherited the cause of freedom that Churchill proclaimed, and the partnership Churchill helped to build. All of you on this ship should be proud to sail in that tradition.
A few weeks after the commissioning, the shock team started installing monitoring equipment and preparing the ship's structure to accommodate the complex network of sensors and cameras.
Well, before shock, there's a lot of PMS that needs to be done on the equipment to make sure the equipment's ready to handle the shock. We have all of our cabinets opened up, check for any loose connections. We make sure everything's tightened down and everything's secured properly so that when it does go through shock, we don't have any cabinet doors flying open or any hoses breaking and creating casualties in the system.
From an instrumentation standpoint, we actually instrumented DDG-81 much better than we had the previous ships because the approach was different. We wanted to get an environment sort of map of each of the combat system spaces. So we placed enough instrumentation all over the deck so that as we start doing equipment shock testing or continue to do it, we know what the test environment's going to be on a DDG. So we can more tailor our shock testing to that environment so we don't over-test or under-test.
One of the things that we were going to be doing is a lot of power monitoring, and power monitoring meant getting into putting sensors and cables in all of the switchboards on board the ship. So that is something that needed to be scheduled because we have 9 switchboards on the ship, and taking switchboards down, you have to go to alternate power, what systems come down. It's a very, very detailed, very intricate level, and it needed a good coordination between both the ship and the HM&E team itself.
Video coverage included the installation of miniature data cameras, broadcast video cameras, recording scenes ranging from exterior operations and damage control to system status panels and combat screen displays. During this installation period, the Winston S. Churchill makes a stop at Naval Weapon Station Yorktown, where the onloading of live ordnance begins. 5-inch projectiles for the 5-inch gun, Mk-46 exercise torpedo, and countless rounds for the close-in weapon system with live and dummy rounds, and 48 Super Arbok practice charges for the chaff launchers. In place of live missiles inside the VLS modules, an inert Block 4A missile, along with weighted and empty missile canisters, were onloaded to collect shock response engineering data and to test the weapon systems following the detonations. Shock training for ship's force started during transit from Yorktown to Mayport Naval Station in Florida. Even though shock trials are primarily engineering tests, the ship is still fully manned and solely operated by its crew. A concentrated and demanding training schedule was devised to replicate the consequences and casualties of the shock event.
The lead up for the first shot was innumerable hours spent both understanding your equipment, understanding how your equipment worked in the ship in the total, the systems of systems approach again, the very basics. What is available? What am I supposed to hold on to? Where is my egress station? How well I know my ship. That started a year ago.
In many cases, the training that we're doing is oriented towards actual live services for when we get underway. And so where we're simulating aircraft running in and out, those should be live aircraft services. For tracking runs for CWIS, mini mobile targets for the ASW side of the house, practice against non-real-time tracks in combat. When we get the mini mobile target for real, they'll have something to track, something to coordinate against.
The Navy executed a complex environmental mitigation plan for each test event in order to minimize the effects of the underwater explosion on marine life.
We ended up having 9 people on the destroyer itself. We had 6 people in the air in 2 different aircraft, visual observers. We had 3 people, actually 5 people on a separate vessel that was out there after the shock trial looking for, to see if we injured or killed anything. And we had 4 people in a P3 that were doing bioacoustic monitoring. So our observers on the bridge wings had both handheld binoculars and also the big eyes binoculars. The big eyes binoculars are 25 power. By using those binoculars and pre-calibrating them, we can tell by the reticle reading and also the bearing from the ship exactly where that animal is, so that they can take a reticle reading and a bearing and be able to give that information back to us. The lead scientist, Scott Krause, had a computer program in front of him that basically he could enter that information and it would come up with the distance just like that. So that in an instant, as soon as that information got entered in, we could tell, is it within 2 nautical miles? Because if it is, we have a red range, we can't shoot.
The crew of the Knock 38 boat loads the necessary explosive charge and support equipment aboard their ship in support of the shock trial. In the early morning hours of the ship's day of departure, the shock team boards DDG-81. Anticipation from the shock team and the crew intensifies as the Winston S. Churchill sets sail to its test station off the Florida coast. Once on station, final preparations begin. Cameras are framed and tested, cables are dressed, and loose items are secured. At the rendezvous point, the Knock 38 boat is primed and the charge is armed. Once the charge is deployed, General Quarters is set throughout the ship, ordering all hands to man their stations. The range gives coordinators the go to proceed with the shot, as support teams and crew eagerly await the final countdown.
Three, two, one, shoot. 3, 2, 1, 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 shoot.
The ferocious detonation blasts the ship, distributing most of its total force in the initial explosion. The repair teams immediately begin their ship-wide search for any structural or equipment damage caused by the shock wave. Ship's force instantly begins communication checks throughout the ship. All stations conduct damage assessment and pass it through the Combat System Officer of the Watch in Maintenance Central. Engineering reports come in ship-wide for the shock team to begin analysis.
In CIC, we were running some engagements, and we all braced for shock. And when the shot went off, a lot of things came out of the overhead, a lot of dust and dirt came out of the overhead, and we immediately sat back down at our consoles and went through what's called a fight-through period for about approximately 15 minutes, where we tried to bring, if the systems were down, we tried to bring them up, basically in a phased order, trying to fight the ship.
Being the switchboard operator, we're in constant communications with the electric plant operator and CCS. I relayed a Class Charlie fire in the switchboard to him. My training played a big role in combating the fire. It was second nature to me. As soon as I realized the situation was happening, I immediately referred back to my training and took action to suppress the fire, maintain a proper fire watch.
Inspection teams, combat system, and HM&E, hull mechanical and electrical fan out throughout DDG-81 to gather data and then collate all the trial cards at the command center set up in the helo hangar. These trial cards document the ship's systems and structural performance during and after the shock event. With all post-shock aerial surveys and operations complete, USS Winston S. Churchill sets course for Mayport. Once back in port, the shock team begins full data analysis.
After every shot, we did a full system-wide test of every system on board the ship, stem to stern, identify discrepancies so that we could document how the ship performed at various shot levels. Based upon that, we would recommend what fixes we need to make before each shot. We went to the next one if we had to repair something that failed, as well as a lot of PMS went back between shots, the baseline, the systems, so we knew exactly where the systems were prior to going to the next shot, and as well as coordinating all the explosive ops and the mitigation portions of it. All that had to happen in between each shot, as well as fleet services, both aircraft and surface craft. So the week time between each shot was quite significant, quite busy.
In addition, Navy divers inspect the ship's hull for any structural damage occurring during the test. On the ship, team members work with the crew in repairing any vital damage. The ship has been fine-tuned, all spaces back up to speed, the crew in position and ready. USS Winston S. Churchill gets underway for the second test of combat survivability. Early the next morning, USS Winston S. Churchill and the Nauk 38 boat arrive on station. Testing instruments on board are calibrated and resecured. Aerial surveys are complete. The range is clear. The order is given to set general quarters. The final countdown begins.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, shoot.
Communications are immediately checked on all networks. Crew members begin the now familiar task of inspecting the ship for damage and injuries.
Shock 2, all the power stayed up, kept support services. We were actually able to go through and do a standard missile engagement after the shot. Same with the gunfire and engagement. Very little to no equipment damage. The crew responded very well to the actual shock event.
During that battle shore condition, we had several C&D skid alarms, high chill water temp from the chill water plant. We sent the technicians out to investigate. They reconfigured to the alternate chill water loop, or we notified the engineers that the AC plant tripped offline. They got it back up, and every time the system was back on the line, the alarms cleared before it got anywhere near being danger of overtemping and hurting the system.
After we all were released from general quarters, then went and started to do a lot of our inspections. We just, did shock inspections. Basically, we had circuit breaker inspections. We had done baseline, so we knew if there was a change in the circuit breakers, we would be able to identify it. We put basically tags on all the circuit breakers throughout the ship to identify if there was a change here and there.
Once the ship is brought back online, the journey is made back to port to prepare for the final shock detonation. In the early morning hours of ship's day of departure, the shock team, perhaps a little tired but eager to begin, boards DDG-81 for the final and most powerful test yet. On station for the third shot, the order is given to set general quarters. A green range is given, and the final countdown begins.
T-minus 15 seconds, brace for shock. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, shoot. Three, two, one, shoot. 3, 2, 1, 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 shoot.
'They performed great. You know, no sooner did I get a report of a Class Charlie fire in an ABT, within a minute later, they reported that the fire was out because all they did was secure power. They went through the steps, their training went into play, systems were safe. As soon as they lose power, they went and saved their systems and waited for me to give them a good plant status before they started bringing systems online, reconfiguring as needed.
Given the first two shots, I figured I was prepared for shock 3. Shock 3 was much more intense. The lights went out, everything shook, but nevertheless, the propulsion plant, electrical distribution system, everything stayed up and running. For the most part, like I said, as in engineering, on the propulsion side, we sustained minor damages and we were able to steam.
The close-in weapon systems track the enemy and fires. The torpedoes are operative, as well as the Super R-Bach practice charges for the chaff launchers. All systems are back online. A successful completion of the shock trial for the crew of the USS Winston S. Churchill.
Principally, I'd say what the crew got out of this was an almost fearlessness about the ability for this ship to sustain damage and a confidence in their shipmates to roll with that damage, restore from that damage, and carry forth.
Back in Mayport, maintenance checks conducted throughout the interior and exterior of the ship provide crucial evidence of the understanding of ship survivability.
This trial is going to give us a lot of information to how we can improve the survivability of this class of ship and other classes. The failure mechanisms are almost identical regardless of the ship class. Getting the data that tells the different frequencies, etc., allow us to qualify equipment off the ship. It makes it much easier to do as opposed to having to do large qualifications on board the ship itself. As far as the data gathered from this trial, it'll be very valuable to improve the design and make this class and future classes much more survivable and much more helpful to the operators out there in the fleet.
Arm yourselves and be ye men of valor, and be in readiness for the conflict.